Hey there, this is Jen T. Grace. I am the founder of Publish Your Purpose, and I am here today to celebrate the launch of It's Not Me, It's You with Nicole Lynn Morris. Nicole, how are you doing and how are you feeling about the fact that your book is in the world?
I will say, so first of all, I am amazing. That is not like something I'm saying just because I am talking to you on this stream. Amazing is my word.
Mhm.
And so I am amazing. And I will tell you, Jen, when I got the proof of the book to do the final read throughs, I think I got them like in February. I cried. And I'm reading it and I'm like, this is me, this is my story. And it's not just the perspective of what happened to me, but it is the story of transparently how I turned pain into purpose. And now, in walking out that purpose, I'm manifesting the promises available on my life and telling it in a way where if people are interested in doing the same work, then they can maybe see themselves in some of what I share. So that's kind of how the book goes. But when I read it, I was like, darn, this is this. And I cried. I cried a little bit before it was coming on here, just from some of the other things that I was concluding before we were coming.
Yeah.
And, I'm just in a really transformational space in my life right now. And I think that's reflected in like all of my interactions. So,
Yeah, I love that. I love the honesty, the kind of transparency, that just kind of showing up as you are. And I know that's so much of what you're kind of about. And so I love that you're modeling exactly what we're talking about. I said this to you before we went live, is that I just love how your book came out. I'm obviously biased because we partnered on it, but I just feel like the cover is so attractive. And then the inside design is just so, I feel like you really just nailed it in terms of what your vision was. And so before we kind of start to kind of pull the labels off of the book,
yes,
can we just kind of talk about a little bit of what your background is and kind of how you're showing up in the world?
certainly. Man, my background is very busy. Busy. So we'll start here. Born and raised south side of Chicago. Stereotypical, and I say stereotypical on purpose, right? Stereotypical Black family story in America. Single mother, because my father was a victim of the crack epidemic in the 80s. Um, Raising two kids, and let's see, just a lot of kind of traumatic things that can happen when you're in those areas of life. Although it's not just limited to Black folks who have those experiences, everybody has them, and we're all human beings, which is part of why the cover looks like it does, because I didn't want people to look at the cover and automatically feel like they couldn't relate to it because there was a person's picture on it. Like, I wanted you to relate to the words because we all have that story. So one of the things my mom always told me, my family calls me Coco. And so she said, Coco, if you go to school and get a good education, then you will get a good job. And so that is what I did.
Mm.
And so, you know, always a good student. One of the labels on that book is good girl. I was and still am the consummate definition of a good girl for the people that are closest to me. I do not want to disappoint. I always want to be ahead of the curve, even though that, imparts pressure on me that I really don't need to carry. I just don't know how not to at this point in my life. So got the education, went on to work in premier global organizations, world-class organizations, then went on to work for myself, and had to go back to work because the consultancy didn't grow at the rate that it could have. And so I've been in healthcare for the last several years at senior manager levels and above, doing strategic initiatives. And so every area of reflection that the book is meant to address, it's addressing it because I've lived it. I've either lived it as somebody who has experienced something and overcome it, or I've lived it and can share from a story of empowerment. But that is my background, and all of that. I say all of that personal and professional stuff because one of the things you will always hear me say, if you, shameless plug, catch me on my podcast, The Permission Slip, is everywhere you go, there you are. I do not believe that we can compartmentalize ourselves from work, versus home versus whatever. If you're showing up at work and you are not a good person, that means you're probably an even worse person at home because you bring the best of yourself to work. And so I just think we have to have holistic conversations, which is why I just did. And I gave you a lot of words, but hopefully that answered the question.
Sure does. It sure does. Okay, so the book is called It's Not Me, It's You. Take
Yes.
their labels off. And then obviously we have a lot of post-it notes on here that have a variety of things like don't complain, mother, rebel, lazy, boss, too much, weak, difficult, leader. So let's talk through just like the premise and the foundation of the book and what you want someone to kind of feel picking it up.
Now, I love that question. So, the premise of the book is when I ended my first marriage 9 years ago now, I expected that the difficult energies I was feeling were going to resolve themselves because I was blaming my first husband, when actually it kind of multiplied, right? Because he was out of the way. So every other broken relationship I had, I got to see it even more because I wasn't focused on why I was always mad at him.
Yeah.
And so I realized, like, I just really started doing work like that. Why am I having all of these issues with all of these people, right? I am clearly the problem if I look at that. And so then I started saying, but do I know who I am? Why am I? So it's not me, it's you literally came from the realization that when I looked in the mirror by that age, it was not me that I was seeing when I looked in the mirror. It was everybody else's expectations. It was everybody else's needs. It was the roles I was playing. It was all of those things. And so that's how It's Not Me, It's You was born, because it's not me, it's you is literally, it's not me that I see when I look in the mirror, it's you. Hang on 1 second. I just need to mute these folks real quick.
Mm-hmm.
Like, be quiet, kids. Love you, mean it. I didn't realize they were going to come in right now.
Yeah, it happens.
It does. And, we're live. So, It's Not Me, It's You really came from the realization that it wasn't me that I was seeing when I looked in the mirror. It was everybody else's needs and their expectations, their labels. And so then I went on a journey of trying to figure out, well, do I want to keep those? First of all, what are they? Where did they come from?
Mm-hmm.
Do I want to keep them? And a lot of people are starting to use the word. We talked about the word kind of authenticity being overused before we came on.
Mm-hmm.
And overused, but necessarily the implications of it being undervalued, which I 100% agree with. And another word that I'm hearing enter the lexicon or concept is the idea of performing self.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think it's very true. We all like literally kind of compartmentalize ourselves into a version of ourselves that's not real. A lot of people do. I won't say everybody, but a lot of people do that, right? But I think when you say performing for myself is so, like, it creates a dissonance, right? It creates an ability to distance yourself from that. So what I hope that people get from reading the book and through me transparently walking through my own life and saying, well, why did I want to approval seek so badly that I would be a good girl? Because that's where that came from. Why did I want everybody's approval so much? Why did I let people be psychologically and verbally abusive to me? Where did I get the notion that I wasn't worthy of being protected? Where did that come from? So I just went all the way back to where like those first seeds had been planted about my lack of worthiness and who I was or who I wasn't, and started really facing it, unpacking what did I want to keep and what did I want to give away and what can I not. Like some things, like the good girl, I'm never going to be able to take that off. I'm always going to try to people please. It's just so much a part of me. But now at least I'm conscious of that. Mm-hmm. And so I can live from a place of agency and power as opposed to being shaped by every area that I walk into.
Oh my God, you just said so many things that I feel like there's so many good things, you know what I mean? So I'm like, my brain is like, where do I go next? Okay, so if we think about your subtitle is Take Their Labels Off.
Yes.
So can you explain kind of like what that means and maybe what the transformation is that the reader might experience by taking their labels off?
Absolutely. So I actually opened the book with a story of where my label of unworthiness came from, like where it was initially rooted. And it was like one of my earliest childhood memories. And taking that label off, right? Because that's something that's in my psyche. It impacts how I interact with people, how I live, why I felt like I needed to like legit feel like I need to earn love sometimes, right? Because I didn't feel worthy. So I went back and I started unpacking, well, where did that come from? Because that first incident that I recount in the book of nearly being hit by a car, but like, why was I outside? Why, why am I being protected, by another kid? And not to cast blame or anything on anybody, but just that was the seed that got planted, was like, okay, no, nobody really has to care about me, like, because this is just what happens, right? So as I began to think about the negative ideas that I had about myself, because make no mistake, this work stems from catching yourself having a negative idea about yourself, putting a label on it. Like, what is this? Because we have to have a way to categorize things in order to address them. And then asking yourself that question specifically, well, am I unworthy? Well, why do I feel this way? And what do I do to combat that? And so in the book, I take the reader through not all, but many of the labels that I have taken off over the years. I tell the story of where that label came from. So if they have a similar story, at the end of each section are pause and reflect questions to intentionally prompt the reader to see, do they have something similar? Maybe it's not unworthiness, but I know a lot of people, and especially women, struggle with the idea of perfectionism, right? And how is that showing up in my behaviors? And then you can decide, well, do I still want to do this? Do I like this? Can I get rid of it so I can be at peace with it, that at least I'm not fighting myself? And so you will feel a sense of a combination of freedom, control, and resolution. If you decide to go on that particular journey. In worst case, if you decide to keep some of the things that are negative, you're empowered about it. You're not victimized by it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a very different thing to say, I have a tendency to people please, and I'm saying that from an empowered position versus I'm a people pleaser and feeling like, there's shame and stigma and anything else wrapped around it.
Which is the thing a lot of people have, people pleasing. Like, especially I think if you're any sort of like professional who's achieved something, you have definitely learned how to people please to do that.
Yeah, the system is kind of designed to almost, it's like a forcing function. It's like, if you want to be successful, you need to people please to some degree, because otherwise you're going to be labeled as bitchy or, uncooperative or any number of other things if you start to push back in those places where you rightfully should be pushing back. But there's a lot of systems that are designed that to push people down rather than empower.
Yes, they are. And one of the labels, I think one of the word on the label is bossy or too much.
Yep.
And exactly what you described is where some of that comes from. And so now I was exchanging with another empowerment speaker on LinkedIn on Sunday or something. And I was like, so in some rooms, the way systems are structured, there's no exception to being in that room except to learn how to be in that room, which sometimes requires you to shrink, because the people in the room who have the power, you can't change that dynamic. But at least now when I'm shrinking, it's not out of insecurity. It is out of strategy.
Yeah.
It is being quiet, because being quiet is what's required to be here. And being here is better than being somewhere else. And so now I'm choosing. I'm not changing, and I'm not trying to fight, because everybody does not mind to fight.
Yeah. Okay. So I have two questions, completely different directions. And I'll say both and we can figure out which comes first. I'm thinking about kind of the systemic ways in which these labels have kind of like showed up in your life and kind of like the peeling back of those labels, but then also your skill set, like where did this come from that you realized that you held this power to pull these labels off? Like did you like was it going through different kind of like therapeutic processes? Was it something that was self
Oh,
exploration? Like what was this? Like I'm so fascinated by this.
those are all like amazing questions. And they kind of weave together. So I'll just give a response off the cuff and you let me know if I missed something you
Love
want
it.
to cover. So, um, being willing to do the work, I'm a person of faith. And so honestly, I just believe that I've been protected by the grace of God my whole life. Um, I've had I've had bad things happen, but my heart and my spirit haven't been changed by them. Um, and so I think that's the first thing that I'll attribute it to. But within that, right? Because I have this idea that there's peace available and power available. Well, one of my influences, which I also talk about in the book, is my mother. And my mother is the kind of woman that if she can touch the stars, she's going for the stars.
Mm,
And so I grew up with that as an example. It was like an impartation, but she didn't even know that that's what she was doing. She was just being herself.
mhm,
And I was just watching her be herself and touch the
mm,
stars. So now we add in my layer of how I naturally problem solve. What are the hurdles? And so it became a combination of me identifying the hurdles. So I'm a hurdle. I don't believe in myself. Sometimes I don't like myself. There was a period in my life when I could not look in the mirror from the neck down because I did not like how I physically looked.
mm,
Well, how do you deal with that? You have to get therapy. You have to get help. You have to have sounding boards and you have to have something reflecting back to you all of the positive things in the world that you really are, not what you don't like that you see, but somebody to see you and pour into you the same way that you will pour into somebody else who you see is struggling.
mhm,
So it's been a combination of those things, of seeing the example of somebody always going for more, so watching them get stuck and realizing that, why they're stuck. A lot of some of it is because they're in their own way here
mhm,
and here in their heart and not seeing it, and then saying, well, how do I not do that? And then reaching out to therapists. So sometimes I had two therapists at the same time. One was a PsyD and one was a naturopathic physician.
mhm,
um, and then coaches. I got introduced to you by my last coach,
mhm,
but just sounding boards. And then I have been very fortunate enough to have mentors as entrepreneurs who were like really successful entrepreneurs. An entrepreneur is going to be different than a 9 to 5 practitioner because I think that's the greatest faith walk you will ever take is to prove yourself to yourself. And so
mhm,
I had this one mentor, and boy, he used to light us up and challenge us on everything we didn't see ourselves as. So it's a combination of all of those things that gave me the will to want to get past the obstacles and
mhm,
face the labels, because at the root of it is a truth that if I didn't do this work, certain things wouldn't be available to me. And while I watched my mom, if the stars were available to her, she was touching them. And
yeah.
so it's all of those things that come together. Now, how the system reinforced some of those labels throughout my life. Um, I think it's everywhere. There's this movie. It's this really like crazy movie. I think it's called like Everywhere, Everything, All at Once or something like
Mhm,
that. And it's all this crazy, chaotic stuff and story happening to this lady. And she's morphing through universes, but not the same kind of concept as Marvel.
mhm,
And then ultimately she ends up fighting all the bad guys and winning and then kind of coming back to herself. That is a perfect analogy for how systems reinforce limiting beliefs, which is really what I think is at the center of your second question.
mhm,
And so, well, growing up on the south side of Chicago, what am I centered in? Poverty,
mhm,
Black folks, poor Black folks, drug addiction, violence. moving into the suburbs, I change. And so it's not all of that, but it is now I'm the poorest kid and I'm
Mm-hmm.
fat. At that time, I have a chapter in the book called Po Fat Child. So I have money issues and weight issues. I can't keep up with these kids. Um, and kids are mean, and so sometimes they make you feel it.
Mm-hmm.
Then prior to that was like the first time somebody tried to molest me. I was 6, and then in this same environment as a youth, I was actually sexually assaulted, and the police blamed me. And the question I always ask is, if I had walked in there as a white girl or an Asian girl or whoever, would that have happened? Like, I don't know, right? But that's police. I'm supposed to be safe.
Mm-hmm.
System reinforcement. So, you have all these markers. So then you transfer, and I go into high school, and I'm always in honors advanced AP courses. So I'm one of 2 Black kids in the class. I got bused into the school district where I was. Well, so now the white folks and the Black folks don't necessarily know what to do with each other, even though it's in the 90s, right? So systemic reinforcement.
Yeah.
Can I keep up? Now I still ended up, but through all of this, right? I don't know this is going on. I'm
Yeah.
just living and going and doing all the things. And so I still went to college on a full scholarship until I had my first kid, and then I left.
Mm-hmm.
And then I got into the workforce. And so now I have all the stereotypes of the Black woman, but of stereotypical Black women. But the other thing is, I was stereotyping the other races too.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know them. So I remember in one of my first firms when I went into, where again I was one of the only Blackface actually. And I thought the way that I was going to relate to them was to talk about country music and race cars. Like it was like it was weird to so we have all these things.
Yeah.
All of that is systemically
Mm-hmm.
driven by, going back to another conversation that we were having earlier, and why the book has the cover that it does. None of us were giving each other grace, including ourselves, to be human beings first.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That is the journey that I hope to take people on through the book, is being a human being first.
Mm-hmm. There's so much more that unites us than divides us, but our society and systems do not want that type of harmony, because that's dangerous to the systems that are oppressing people in all directions.
And it truly is about class first.
Mm-hmm.
Race was a construct created after the poor people began to band together.
Mm-hmm.
So, see, those are deeper conversations. At some point, I may or may not, take on and just share my perspective. But
yeah.
So did I answer the questions though?
You absolutely did. Yeah. Yeah. And I think taking on these things and taking on these questions and big topics, what I love so much about how you always show up, whether, we're having this conversation where people are obviously listening to it, they're watching us, but even when we're on, calls to get the book actually done, like that little detail, you are always like the same Nicole. Like you show up consistently in all those settings, and you're always a kind of like a beacon of light of like what's possible. Like even if, and I don't know if you were having a real crap day in any of our past conversations, but if you were, you would never know it, because I feel like you just show up and you're like, I'm here to do the work, and I'm going to do the work really damn well. And I'm also here to serve at the same time. And I think there's something like really beautiful about that combination, because you're like uniquely you, always you. And I think that's why you are the perfect person to take on some of these harder conversations, because you're not gonna, acquiesce. You're gonna show up and be inclusive of everybody at the table of that conversation. Because I think sometimes we think of like inclusivity and inclusion and all the things, and it's really so exclusionary by its definition of inclusion. Whereas I think you were just genuinely inclusive of everybody at the table.
That is such a high compliment, and thank you so much for saying that. And I will say, for a long time, I didn't want the responsibility, because I believe that that's a gift, and I didn't want the responsibility of that gift for a while. So a lot of times I ran from it, but I believe that you're right, and it's for that reason that I feel like I want to tackle some of those conversations. Like, honestly, even from the crowd of folks that, if we talk about I'll say it this way, from the all lives matter quote, right? Because in just some of the language initially for them, it feels exclusionary and protect, like they need to protect themselves from something. I think there's room to have all the conversations as long as people are willing to hear the other side without fear. And so, that's one of those things where I go back and I'm like, okay, I got to trust God on this one, because there is a side of me that is also very sharp, and you have to be when you are progressing through things. So I'm like, okay, Lord, you're gonna have to do this because
you're gonna have to intervene, or there's gonna be some kind of consequences.
Well, but even then, like I think naturally I would run.
Mm.
It's a big weight.
Yeah, it's a huge weight. It's a huge weight, and not everyone can carry it. And so it's making the decision, is this something that you do want to carry? And if it is, then great. And if it's not, you don't have to pick it up. And I think there's like a lot of agency in that too.
Yeah, and I think that's what I'm all about. And that's also why I would rely honestly on my faith to help me make that decision. What am I purpose to do? My niece is coming to give me a hug. Come on. you here now.
I love it.
I only see them like once a quarter, so when I'm in Chicago. So in any event, sorry for the sidetrack, but I think that's why I have to rely on my faith to help me do those things, because I think some of those things are things that I see that are beyond myself. However, what I have been able to master as of recently, in most scenarios, honestly, is myself. And how do I show up, and how do I want to show up? And my personal mission statement is to be a thumbprint of love and excellence everywhere that I tread. And so I really do try to just show up that way, like authentically all the time. And so I'm glad that that's the way it is. And even like when I look at even for my kids and for like all the people, I'm like, dude, I'm the same, but like, I'm literally like the same person.
Yeah.
I don't know how. And then I think we were talking in one of those conversations, probably when we were in the middle of the process. Oh no, maybe at the beginning. And I think I was telling you like what I hope to feel through this process. And I think I said something like, dude, I just found myself. Like, I am not interested in giving it away so that I can be shaped by, again, like even, perceptional market. And so that's also why I approached this process the way that I did, because I do not intend to lose my agency, not consciously ever again.
There's no reason for it. None. There's nothing good enough to give that up, in my opinion. There's no incentive great enough to give up agency.
No, it's too expensive. And I fought too hard. Like I worked too hard to get where I am. To get where I am. What I mean by that is like holistically as a human being to consciously compromise that. And I keep people around me who hold me accountable to who they know I am, not to who I have the potential to be, how somebody has the potential to market me, or whatever that is. Because I've had at least a couple offers and people are like, nope, no, go with that person because X, Y, and Z. And so I keep people around me who will also hold me accountable.
Yeah, which is powerful. And I feel like it would be so off-brand if you weren't doing that. Right. Like if we just kind of look at what your book is, kind of planting the flag in the sand to say like, this is who I am and this is what I stand for. I feel like it would almost be like just completely off track if you were like, I'm just going to be a Tasmanian devil and just kind of scroll around and hope for the best. That's just so not how you roll.
And the funny thing is, like, we joke, but let me say me, when I say we, I mean me and my husband. I used to joke like that I have a whole like nap ministry. Because if something happens that is like out of line with who like the energy's off, I legitimately I have to take a nap. So I have not needed naps in a long time for me, should I say.
Awesome.
So I do not want to need naps again to reconcile, spiritual discombobulation. And I'm sorry, y'all, I just use big words all the time. I make my own channel. We gonna just talk about the big words and what they mean.
I'm into that channel. Tell me where to subscribe.
Yeah, and then my kids make fun of me, and so it's just a thing. They're like, "Mom, I can't say that to people."
Spiritual discombobulation is a great phrase. You should trademark that. Because I feel like it's probably a fair statement that most people feel to some.
Honestly, they just don't know. They don't know what to call it.
Yeah. That's exactly what it is, though. You're just like, I don't know, like combobulated. Yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this as we're kind of like, winding down.
Sure.
If you had a magic wand and you were just kind of like wave it in everything that you want this book to do for both yourself and for the person who's picking it up, who wants that transformation, like, what are you hoping someone kind of says to you at a conference or bumps into you on the street and says, like, what did the book do for them?
I am hoping, I love this question, by the way. Thank you. I am hoping that people read the book and say, I see myself clearer now. And I am no longer making choices based on chance. Or at least I started the path, right? And because one of the things that I tell my children, and honestly, anybody who I'm talking to, there may be some negative things that we choose to keep. And some negative things we can't escape. And I know that's a difficult thought to process for people that like, why would I choose to keep something negative? Because nobody's all positive. That's why. You might want to curse some people out. You might want to, you might want to do some things that people just label as bad. Like you having a hot temper, you might need that as a defense mechanism because you're so nice that people have exploited you sometimes. So until you get to a place where you have the power to establish a healthy boundary at the onset of a relationship, you might need that quick temper. And so what I would hope that people leave with is a clearer vision of their self, being able to see themselves in the mirror, and agency, a conscious choice about who I am and who I want to be. And to hell with anybody who is judging what you do, because nobody lives for you. Nobody dies for you. If you're a person of faith, nobody goes to hell for you or any of those things. So it's to take your power back. So I would hope that people feel like they could take some of their power back.
I love that so much. Is there anything that you want to kind of, say as we're concluding, something maybe I didn't ask you that feels important to share?
Forgive yourself. Love yourself. Know that as you go on the journey, you may not even know your own voice, and that's okay too. Sometimes it feels like a deflating place to live from, to admit that maybe you don't know your own voice, but you cannot find your own voice if you don't know that you don't have it. And so be nice to yourself while you go through whatever process that you're in, because you cannot give to others what you don't know how to give to yourself first. We're like toothpaste tube. Whatever you squeeze, what's in us is coming out. So that's what I would hope to leave people with today, is to be nicer to yourself.
I love that. That's such good parting words. And your book is now available where books are sold. So it's not me, it's you. Take their labels off. And my call to action for folks would be to, go directly to your website, labelsbegone.com, or check out bookshop.org or your local independent bookstore to make your purchase where possible. It's obviously available on all of the retailers. So, but if you can support local, that is always my preference that I like to kind of put a plug in for.
Yes.
Nicole, thank you. I love being in your energy. It's just always so like enveloping and positive, and you're just like such an action taker too. So it's like a nice balance of like, yes, we can do this, and we're also getting it done, versus like, sometimes have that imbalance where it's like we're getting all the things done and there's like no grounding. Whereas like you just get this nice grounding energy and you're like, I'm getting shit done today. So I very much appreciate you. And I'm so happy that we have crossed the finish line of the publishing process, which, as you know, is no small feat now. Not an easy task, but you did it. And that's exciting.
Well, your team was absolutely amazing. And a shout out to Alex. Help me get through, help me, sounding board for all of the things that happened in my head. No, you guys were amazing and made the process so digestible for me. So thank you guys. And thank you for the compliment. Thank you for being able to appear on your stream. And I look forward to just dropping the pebbles in the ocean and seeing what ripples we create.
I love that so much. Thank you, Nicole.